Today I'm going to be looking at another Shadows track, and you might have seen that quite recently I looked at Apache and I did a detailed two-part lesson on that, and that's probably still the Shadows' most famous piece of music. But I wanted to look at something different today, so I've gone for Man of Mystery. I think it's an equally great piece of music, though perhaps not quite as well known. And I'm a big fan of this kind of 60s instrumental music, whether it's US surf music or this kind of thing from the British Shadows. So let me begin by playing through the complete piece of music, and then I'll break it down for you and explain what's going on. So this was a single for the Shadows in 1960, and like with a lot of Shadows stuff, they didn't actually write it. It was an existing piece of music, and apparently it was the theme tune to a TV series or a film series called The Edgar Wallace Mysteries, and that doesn't really mean much to me. I just looked that up on Wikipedia, but I suppose the genius of the Shadows was to take these existing pieces of music and come up with these amazing definitive arrangements of them. And there are lots of interesting things going on here, some great riffs. There's a lovely little solo actually where Hank Marvin is really cutting loose, which is not something you hear him doing that often. And it's quite easy to play, I suppose, but what I find with Shadow stuff with Hank Marvin is that the basic idea is quite simple, but then as soon as you start trying to get really close to the record and trying to emulate his tone and his touch, it's actually really hard. And I'm not claiming that I can totally nail this piece of music, but I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to do my best to explain to you what's going on. So let's get started. We're in the key of A minor, and I'm basing this lesson on the original 1960 recording, which I've listened to very, very closely. And I think it's probably been re-recorded with some slight differences. And when I see him do it live, sometimes he's not doing some things exactly like on the original recording. So let's start with the intro, which goes like this. So we're starting off with a unison bend, so we're up in the 12th position here. I'm bending a D note here, this is the 15th fret on the second string, bending a D up to an E, and I'm also playing an E note on the top string at the 12th fret. And just bending that D until it matches the note that we're playing on the top string, and giving it a little bit of vibrato with the vibrato arm. So this is a big part of the Hank Marvin style, is his use of the whammy bar of the vibrato arm, and it's used throughout this track, and often he's just holding on to that whammy bar, just giving everything a bit of a subtle modulation in pitch, and then sometimes he's giving it a bit more of a vigorous wiggle for some vibrato like on this unison bend. Then we've got the low E string, just played 4 times, maybe with a little bit of palm muting. Got another unison bend, and the low E once again. Then we're into the main theme, And I think it might be worth just talking briefly about the harmony and the chords that are being played by Bruce Welch. And I think I probably said this in the Apache video, but he's an excellent rhythm player, quite underrated. And the whole tune is, for me, it's based on this kind of descending melody that you can hear inside the chords. It's quite a common thing. It's hear it in lots of different songs. Lots of songwriters like that device, and you can harmonize that kind of descending line in various different ways. But I think what's going on in this tune is we're starting on an A minor, then an E, A7 and D, and then we're going to D minor, A minor, D minor and E. That's the basic chord progression, and you can hear in that chord progression you've got that descending internal melody. So it's a really nice chord progression. Notice also that we're using this D minor voicing. We had this in Apache, so it's a D minor with an F in the bass, so first inversion, so it's frets 3, 2, 3 and 1. So that's the basic chord progression, and it's all played with this galloping kind of strumming rhythm. So So it's certainly worth knowing what chords you're playing over when you're learning the lead part to this tune, and you might just want to learn that rhythm part as a great exercise in strumming and rhythm guitar. So let's move on to the main riff that goes like this. Such a great part, this, and we're starting off coming out of this A minor chord. Really, you've got an A, C, and then an F to an open E, and then we're descending. So we've now got this G sharp, B, and the melody notes are staying the same on top. And then we've got open G to the 3rd fret here, and then F to E on top again, and then you've got F sharp A, and then so continuing that descending movement, F, A, E, D, and then so E, A, D, C, D, C, and then just going between C and B. And it's important that you finger this in the correct way so that it's smooth, and I think I'm fingering it in the same way as Hank does. I've watched some video footage quite closely, and it makes sense the way that he's doing it. It really makes it flow and sound smooth. So I'm starting off on fingers 2 and 1, and on finger 1 there, and then we've got just all played in position, but then here I've got 3, 1, and then 3 here. Reaching over with my 2nd finger to catch this bass note. This is an important fingering here to get the smooth melody happening. We've got so 2, 1, open, 3, and then I've got 1 and 1. So I'm just fretting that E with my 1st finger, just flattening it down to get the A, and then back in position. So give that fingering a try. I don't think it's the only way to do it, but it certainly makes sense, and it makes the melody sound nice and smooth. And also, of course, you're going to want to add a little bit of whammy bar vibrato as well, so just holding onto that bar as you're playing this melody. And something I find quite difficult, I think. It's not a part of my personal style to do that, so it takes a little bit of getting used to do that, but it really does make it sound like Hank as soon as you add in a bit of that whammy bar. So that's the main theme. That is then repeated, but there's just a slight variation in the very last bar of the repeat. So instead of going to this, it goes to this. So it resolves itself. So it's C, B, this B flat or A sharp, and then going to an A minor chord and giving that a bit of a dip on the whammy bar. Next we've got a B section which goes like this. So we're going to a D minor chord here, and we've got a little melody which follows the chord tones. So it's based off of a D minor triad. We've got D, F, B to A, and then we're going to A minor. So a similar melody which fits the chord, so C, E, B to A. And then coming down on the D string, 6, 5, 4, 3, and a little twangy low down riff here. A, C to open D, D sharp, D and C. Then we're going back to D minor, and this time we're really just arpeggiating the chord shape a little bit, and I don't think you need to be super precise with this bit. Just hold down the correct chord, and then we're going to A minor, just picking out some notes from that A minor chord, and then we're going to a B or a B7, and I'm actually just holding down a B major chord here, and then just before we head back to the A section, I'm playing this E octave shape, so 9 on the 3rd string, 12 on the top string, just giving it a dip on the bar and then bringing the bar back up again. Then we're going round once more for the main theme, and there's another B section, but it's played slightly differently. So we're starting off just by strumming the D minor chord, and then strumming an A minor chord, and once again coming down on the D string. If you're being pedantic, I'm not hearing that F note the second time he plays the B section. It's just going. And then we've got a little A minor pentatonic lick, which is great. We've got. So just coming out of the A minor pentatonic shape, kind of position 1, we've got a bend at the 8th fret on the B. And I'm hearing a little bit of a rake here. So I'm just kind of raking your pick up through the higher strings. Pull off from 7 to 5 on the G, and then coming down to the root, and then just some pentatonic notes to finish the lick. Then more D minor, A minor, and then we're going to B. I'm just arpeggiating that, just picking out some notes from that chord, and then we've got this. So a couple of different ways you can play this kind of twangy riff. So you can play it all on the low E string, just going between the low E and the E note at the 12th fret. And it might be that actually, just going between 11 and 12 and the open string sometimes. Or you could do it like this. So playing the E flat and the E notes on the 5th string. Looking at Hank play it live, he's kind of playing it there and sometimes going, playing it a bit like that with a power chord. That sounds cool too. It sounds to me on the recording like it might be played on the 1 string on the low E string. So you just got a couple of options there. It doesn't particularly matter. Let's move on to this great little solo. It's all played in the 12th position, mainly using notes from the A minor pentatonic scale. So if you know your caged minor pentatonic shapes, you've got your A octave shape here, and then the scale is to think about that when you're learning this solo. I'm going to take you through this phrase by phrase. I'm not going to describe every single note here because there are lots of them, but I'll play it through for you slowly and hopefully you'll be able to pick it up from the video. If you need to, you can slow down the video, and of course there will be a tab up on my Patreon page if that would be useful to you. Now the first phrase goes like this. We've got, so sliding up to 15 on the B and going between that note and 12 on the top string and resolving that lick to a C. And then we've got a similar phrase. So again, going between those two notes, 15 and 12. And sometimes just letting them ring together. And it's nice that that bend is a little bit indeterminate. It's kind of somewhere in between a 1 fret and a 2 fret bend. And then the next phrase, this is a little bit hard to hear on the recording, but I've decided to do it something like this. So again, starting on this D, I've got a little kind of rake upwards to this high E note. So just kind of muting and scraping through the strings. Something along those lines. Don't need to be too precise with this. I don't think Hank does it exactly the same way when he plays this live. You could just streamline that phrase a little bit and go, something like that is going to work. And then we've got this. So again, bending this D, releasing it, and then just coming down the pentatonic scale, double stop at 12 on the 2nd and 3rd strings. And then we've got this great idea based on double stops. So it's just going between 14 and 12 on the 2nd and 3rd strings. Sometimes you can just hear the 14th and 12th frets on the top string as well, just coming through. And he sets up this kind of rhythm. Might just do this without the delay actually. It's kind of galloping rhythm, and if you've got the delay in there, then that kind of fills in some of the gaps between the notes and it makes it sound busier than it actually is. And then just the last phrase we've got there is, again, those same double stops. We're just bouncing between those and this E note. And then double stop on the top 2 strings. And then bending the D. And then an E. So that's the solo. If I just put all of that together at a slow speed, we've got 2, 3, 4. And that's really it for this one. We've then got the main theme once again. I think played pretty much the same as before. It's played twice, and then at the very end of the tune we've just got. So we're resolving that melody, strumming the A minor and ending on our unison bend. Let me take you through the gear that I'm using today, and I'm going to keep this quite brief. I did go into quite a lot of detail in the Apache video about the Hank Marvin tone, the kind of gear that he used and how to get that sound with the gear that you might have at your disposal. So I'm not going to go into a similar amount of detail today. I'll put a link to that video on screen if you want to check that out. I will just whiz you through what I'm using today though. I'm using my Strat, which is a 60s reissue Strat. It's a fairly new one. It's 4 or 5 years old. I forget which year Strat this is based on. I think it's 64, something like that. And obviously you want a whammy bar on your Strat, and I've got this Strat set so that the bridge is floating a little bit, so you're able to push the bar down as well as pull it up. I think that's quite important if you want to play shadow stuff. And for this particular tune, I think it's probably played on the bridge pickup throughout. And the amp I'm using today is my Vox AC30. I've got just a touch of overdrive coming from the J Rocket Archer. It really just serves to warm up the sound a little bit, add a little bit more mid-range. And then I've of course got the delay, and I spoke a lot about this in the previous video. This is really the key part to getting the Hank Marvin sound. He doesn't actually use any reverb, it's all done with delay, and often this kind of multi-tap delay. And there are various ways of getting this sound, but today what I decided to do is go with 2 delay pedals. So I've got 2 Boss digital delay pedals, and the first one has got this kind of delay, so just 1 repeat kind of slap back delay. And then the second pedal has got a slightly longer delay time, and then you put the 2 pedals on at the same time and you get something like that. So you get the slap back, and then you get a couple of other repeats coming a little bit later. So it's got a kind of rhythmic character to it, and when you're playing riffs and chords, it kind of creates the illusion of a kind of reverb sound. You're not always hearing those distinct delay repeats. So there we go, that's Man of Mystery. As usual, there's going to be a tab and backing track up on my Patreon page, and the tab is a detailed and I hope reliable tab for the entire piece, and the backing track is my own backing track which I put together. So check those out if you want to. You can pay what you like on the Patreon page and get access to those and many other tabs and backing tracks. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.